Hello and welcome everyone to this evening's Spotlight on at Media City UK, the virtual series. Coming live to you, a little bit late, but sorry, we just had a couple of technical hitches, but we're here now. Come live to you this evening on Facebook Live, care of the team at Salford University. I'm Claire Hoang, I'm the digital executive producer of Corinne Emmerdale, ITV, or as I like my London colleagues to call me, the Queen of the North. But yeah, they're actually technically not allowed to call me that. Talk of Queens, I'm joined this evening by Lou Cordwell. Hi Lou. She's the founder of Manchester digital design company magneticNorth, and Chris Condron, who's the BBC Director of Digital Products. Oh. Hey. And our topic today is digital, lessons learned during the COVID-19 pandemic and its importance to the economic future of Greater Manchester. And in this instalment of the virtual series, we're going to start off with about 30 minutes of chat. And then the last 15 minutes, we'll go to you guys who are watching on the live stream. So please do send in your questions on the Facebook feed and we'll get through as many of them as we can. So I'm just going to start. Hello, sorry, just had that on screen. Hi, everyone. I'm going to start with Chris because it's been a very strange time with the COVID pandemic. How has it kind of affected you and the kind of way you've worked in your teams? What's worked, what's been difficult, and what's been better?
I think such a broad question. Sorry, hello everyone. All right. When I think how it's affected, I think I'm struck by the range of ways that it's affected people and how it's about so much more than work. And some people are worried about health, some people are worried about family, about school, about schooling, about work, money, loneliness, structure. So work's only one of the things that I think it's affected in people's lives, and I think it's an incredibly strange time. I'm struck by how relatively easy it is for people like me. Like we live in a house, we've got classic manager bookshelves behind us, and we get to spend more time with our family. But we've also got people in our teams who are in shared flats with laptops on ironing boards. I'm also struck by how unfairly the effects of this are based on socioeconomics. And when we talk later about Manchester as a city, many of us live in nice places or live in suburbs. It isn't affecting us fairly. It's disproportionately hitting people at certain ends of the socioeconomic thing. But mostly I'm hit by the range of ways that it's hit us.
Okay, and thanks for that. Lou, have you found it kind of the same as well with the people that you're working with your company?
Yeah, I mean, as Chris says, we're relatively lucky in that what we do for a living can largely be done remotely. It might not be exactly how we'd like to do some of those things, but we have clients that we only meet twice a year. For them, weirdly, it's life as normal. We're carrying on working with them and doing our things. So I think, that experience versus people I talk to who own a restaurant or a hairdressers or who just have had to overnight stop their businesses or fold their businesses or just not know when they're going to get back to some kind of normal income stream. I think we all consider ourselves relatively blessed, but I think the people I worry about most, I think, in our team are the people who live on their own or are perhaps more used to working in a team on a daily basis, so I think it's hitting people in different ways. And yeah, whilst we can all do our job, I think we're all definitely getting to a point where we'd much rather be back together at least part of the week than we would be continuously looking down each other at a camera. So yeah, I think people are wrestling with different demons, if I'm honest, in different kind of ways.
No, and sorry, that was just an example of my kid running in.
There you go. We've all seen everyone's kids now. So
sorry, Chris, were you gonna?
I completely agree with that, but and also to add, like, there's almost like some of the things you see on social media, like if you haven't learned a language and you're doing 50 sit-ups every half hour and you're cooking. I think we're coping rather than thriving. I think this is really, really hard, and this is how we get through and help each other through rather than some massive opportunity. There will be some opportunities that come out of it, but it still feels like we're getting through and should be helping each other at the minute.
So from kind of Lou's point, which, we do all three of us kind of work in digital, and obviously that's now kind of come to the forefront in a way with technology. Things like how people are now using Zooms, you know, to kind of meet with each other and to have birthday parties and things as well. I mean, we've found from the creative point of view anyway, because I work in the digital team, IT with Corey and Emmerdale, and though the film actual production side had to shut down for a bit, what we found is the digital side, you know, we could keep going. Like you were saying, you know, we're quite lucky. And actually it's given us quite a lot of creative opportunities, despite the difficulties of, you know, kids running in or such. Have you found that, you know, maybe if we go, Chris, from a kind of BBC product side, you know, have you found actually BBC have risen to the challenge of, you know, something that we weren't expecting, and actually this has actually been a bit of a catalyst to make digital products move on a bit more?
I hope so. You know, I'm kind of uniquely the wrong person to judge whether the BBC has done well. I would hope that the audiences would say that well. I can think of a couple of ways where I think we might have done well, and actually a lot of those are coming out of Salford, actually coming out of Media City. The first one is around trust and reliability, and those live press conferences and the live news coverage coming out of BBC News, especially the first half of this crisis, has been huge. We still get over 15 million unique users a day on BBC News Online. And then there's the Reuters digital report came out, like the gold standard for digital news report came out last week, and BBC News is far trusted higher than anything else. So that stuff around live and trust, I think, is really important. I think the work we've done with BBC Bite Size, the education product, over the last couple of years actually meant that could flex. And then when the schools were obviously coming out, the team there actually across content, products and technology teams, they worked together to kind of get a service out to do daily lessons in 2 or 3 weeks, which is an amazing thing. That was getting about 5-6 million unique users a week.
Wow.
And then the last one is like kind of listening to audiences and seeing what audiences want. And I don't know about anybody here, but I've eaten far too much bloody banana bread. And so BBC Food was kind of the sleeper kitchen hit of lockdown, and the audiences, and we've seen a bit of a shift there, but that was getting 6 million users a week, still doing about 4 million users a week. It shifted a little bit. Everyone's got kind of an eye on the post lockdown bodies, and we've gone from banana bread to dates. It's a combination of scaled things, doing things well, and also being able to react and listen to audiences. I think we've done okay for this phase. I think a new phase starts quite soon as well.
Was there anything that you had to, like, you know, just develop a lot quicker, or you weren't expecting, it wasn't on the plan and you suddenly had to?
The education one, the bite-sized one's a really good example of that. So turning round daily lessons in 2 or 3 weeks is taking. But there's a really underlying message there. A lot of people think digital's kind of quick, and it's not really. It's only quick when the 2 years before that you've been doing properly and doing planning, and that's what enables you to quick. So I'm pleased that we did that, but I'm pleased that we spent 2 years being able to do that and then could kind of turn it around in 2 weeks. But I think the education one's the fastest thing we did.
Okay. So Lou, I think you were saying, you know, obviously for your business, you've kind of, because you're in digital, you've been kind of able to go on, but you're also co-chair of the Greater Manchester LEP as well, which is the local enterprise partnership. Have you found from a business's point of view, like you were saying, the businesses that you're working with, have you found varying challenges for them, or have they seen this as an opportunity? Sorry, are you on mute? Technology. Billy, I think we might have to unmute. I can see. Sorry, digital technology, especially live. No, can anyone? We'll try again. Sorry.
Is that better?
There we go.
There we go. I have to be unmuted like a child lock in a car, you know. What was the question again? Now we've lost the mute.
It's fine. I just saying, yeah. So from the businesses side, yeah.
So we're definitely unusual. I think generally, if you look at across Greater Manchester and across the country, I mean, Manchester's not really untypical of the way the whole country's kind of economy is going. There's just been a massive slide in confidence, and so the slide in confidence, you know, which is triggered by a lot of things. It's triggered by uncertainty. People have seen their income streams just drop off overnight. You know, some people have been able to access funding pretty quickly to rescue the businesses. Some people could have accessed funding, but don't necessarily, with all that uncertainty, want to take on, you know, millions of pounds worth of debt. And some people just haven't qualified, you know, so the CBIL stuff and you know, some of the larger scale loan capacity that was made available by government, and generally that was a good response. You know, some of that, you know, was just too difficult for people to qualify for and to qualify in time. You know, so Greater Manchester's, you know, as we start our own loan for to try and get immediate cash to people who needed it, like for the next payroll, not in 4 months. You know, they were looking at just dropping off a cliff. You know, so but generally the picture has been and continues to be, in all honesty, pretty unstable. And I think we all know there's an odd cliff edge coming when furlough begins to wind up a little bit, you know, and people are faced with the reality then of some really difficult choices, you know. So I think yeah, we are really only just in the first throes of this, even though, you know, we're talking about we're out of lockdown now and, you know, we're returning to normal. And I think what we have to remember is, you know, Manchester and kind of the north is a couple of weeks behind London in the sense of where we've been in terms of, you know, rates of infection and, you know, the curves we've all been monitoring. So sometimes we tend to kind of look at the universe through a very London lens and think we're over a certain point. And actually at those points we were beginning to talk about returning to normal, Manchester was still on an up curve, you know, and you know, very, very nervous as a kind of city region about what lay ahead, you know. So yeah, so there's a weird time delay. But there is also just a universality of, you know, we're facing something that, you know, we haven't faced in 300 years is the reality.
Yeah. And, you know, going back to your point in Manchester as well, because obviously you've worked on the kind of digital blueprint for Manchester as well. Can you just tell us a little bit what that is? And then has this affected that, really?
Yeah, so you'll, I mean, you know, people will hear Andy Burnham talk about our digital ambition and our ambition to be a top 5 digital city in Europe. The blueprint is the second version of the strategy that begins to set out what we actually mean by that. And it's a combination of two things. It's the kind of business and economy kind of perspective on that, as well as the society perspective and how we want that to affect people.
And do you think how, you know, obviously the COVID kind of pandemic, how has it affected that? You know, does it mean that we've had to adopt some digital transformation a lot faster? Or do you think, like you said, some of the smaller businesses, it might slow them down completely? And how can we help, I guess? I think Lou might be slightly frozen.
Or she's sitting very still.
You know, she's winning that contest of musical statues. Whilst we'll just wait for Lou to unfreeze, we'll go to you then, Chris, because obviously Manchester is something that obviously you're quite passionate about as well. You know, Lou kind of mentioned the ambitions to be in top 5 digital cities. What do you think makes Manchester so great? Or
wow, I think loads of things. I think. And this is so I was born in Manchester. I left when I was 20. I moved around, lived in London for a while, lived in Edinburgh, came back to Manchester because I genuinely think it's the best city in the world. It's the right size. It's like the Goldilocks city. It's not too big and it's not too small. I've lived in cities that are too small, and I've lived in London, which is just kind of gets too big. Manchester's just that right size for me. I think we've got talent and people, which is what you need. I think the last 10 years of a digital ecosystem in Manchester is a huge kind of foundation. We're in front of a lot of cities with that. The talent and the associations we've got with genuinely world-class universities and also colleges, FE and tertiary education, not just universities, I think is amazing. I think genuinely, I would say this, wouldn't I, because I'm a Manc, right? And there's the old line about we do things differently here. I think that's as much about the doing as the differently. So you can't PowerPoint your way to greatness, right? This is the city of the Industrial Revolution, of computers and suffragettes and splitting atoms and music scenes. We make things and we do things. And this digital world, this digital revolution is not going to be about just saying things. It's going to be about doing things. I think there's political will. Lou's far better place for me to talk to that, but genuine political will. I think there is a genuine opportunity. You know, we all talked earlier about we're the northern person who dials into meetings in London. Well, the meetings might not all have to be in offices in London anymore. It might be a bit more equitable. And I also think there's a civic pride we can leverage. And Lou talked about uncertainty, right? Who knew that the hero of the lockdown was going to be a manc, right? And was going to be a footballer, and was going to be a black working class footballer, right? But the most unknown, unexpected, amazing thing that I think we've seen out of this lockdown is what Marcus Rashford's done. This city will always surprise people. That's why I think we've got every chance.
Good point. And sorry, Lou, we've got Lou back. Hi. Sorry, before the very wordy question before we lost you, Lou. We'll just check you're on mute as well. Was obviously, you know, digital blueprint in Manchester. How do you think this kind of has affected it? And, you know, has it changed that path for the better or for worse at the moment? I think every time we get her back, we lose her again, I'm afraid. Next time she comes back and she waves, she's coming straight on. Right. Oh, she's moving rooms. Okay.
I'm moving rooms. I'm moving houses. I'm moving.
It's good though. We can get more of your house.
You can see some pets probably if we stop still. But yeah, let's go for a different room instead. So,
do you want 2 seconds to get your breath back?
Keyhole is very good.
My house isn't that big that I need to catch my breath, sadly. So.
This is why we've all got, like, it's so hot. My face is bright red. You know what I mean? Bottles of water today, so it's not great to run around, but got your breath. Last again, third time lucky. So in terms of the digital blueprint, what it means for Manchester. Has this, you know, is there an opportunity for this, or has it delayed things, do you think?
Yeah, so I think there's two things Manchester did over the last 12 months. You know, Chris talked about laying foundations, and the blueprint set out the ambition, and it talked very clearly about, you know, we're not really interested in building another Silicon Valley. You know, for us it is about people. It's about an equitable gain, not just 10 VCs at the top, that actually we see an opportunity for digital to transform the way we deliver everything from public services to new businesses. So it's an economic vision still, but it's about how that gets distributed and where that comes from. And it's about doing stuff, as Chris said, you know, it's about making things that are useful in people's lives and making people's lives better. The other piece of work we did that's become a real kind of economic cornerstone is the local industrial strategy, which was born out of the government's national industrial strategy at that time. But what that does is it says, you know, here is the roadmap of what's going to really drive our economy for the next 10, 20 years. And one of the 4 main boxes in that is creative and digital. So those two things make, you know, what are seemingly just pieces of paper do allow us, as I've learned over the years, to make sure that we have the political will to stand on stages and stand on question time and stand with government and say, we're really serious about this and it's right at the heart of our strategy. So give us some money and help us build the skills and help it, you know, and so those things help to unlock the stuff that we know we need to get where we want to get to. But they set a really different flavour, you know. So lots of cities all over the world will talk about a digital ambition, but what's important is the flavour of ambition that we've got, you know, and what we will count as success, you know, which is crudely, you know, people who 20, 30 years ago would have seen no hope, now actually seen a line into a really good job with a really good future where they enjoy what they do and they get rewarded fairly for that, you know. So I think we've seen a massive transformation, and I mean, you know, our business is 20 years old next month, which I can't quite believe. But I keep saying to people, it's almost like we've waited 20 years to get to this point. It's like we've just started really to kind of have the platform that we thought was possible in Manchester and we're really passionate about. But it's kind of like the rest of the world's maybe caught up a little bit with us, you know.
And I can see Chris nodding along quite a lot of that as you were kind of speaking. Do you think as a result of this, because obviously it's COVID-19 has just been, no one expected it, but can you see opportunities as a result of this now to either to move that a bit forward, or has there been stuff that's had to come out of it that is something that we can take forward in the future?
Yeah, so what's really interesting is those documents that we've talked about, and those kind of, you know, ambition statements assumed a rate of adoption of technology that we thought might take 5 years, maybe 10 years. And in a matter of weeks, we've seen people, you know, there's been a burning platform, and the number of businesses I've spoken to where they've thought about digitizing some things, they've thought about the fact that in the future they're going to need to do some of this stuff. But the reality that's hit them is they've probably not got a business if they don't sort this in the next 6 to 12 months. So that kind of urgent need, and the fact that people, you know, consumers, end users, audiences, all that stuff, have just completely transformed their usage because they've had to, or they won't be able to work, and they won't be able to earn money, or they won't be able to speak to their grandkids, or, you know, whatever that might be, it definitely presents opportunity. The difficult bit is the pain point in the middle, where you've got to reskill a set of people who are pointed at industries that may not survive, or may not survive in the way that we knew them. And you've got to work out very quickly what the new industries are going to be, whether that's digital healthcare, whether that's, you know, retrofitting housing so that we can have affordable housing. You know, there's a load of emerging opportunities out of this, but it's about the pace at which you can do stuff, you know, and get people into those reskilling channels, into the, you know, into the new opportunities. And the biggest concern, I think, for the city region at the moment is there's a bunch of young people going to come out of college, out of universities, who were promised apprenticeships, who were promised, and that's just been annihilated, you know. And so for those young people who've had 10 years of austerity, crudely, and are now going to go into the worst recession for 300 years, we've got to do something pretty quickly, actually, in terms of giving them opportunity and giving them skills and giving them jobs to go to, you know, which, I mean, it's going to be that basic, you know.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I suppose, Chris, from a BBC point of view as well, you know, have you guys had to adapt to anything, such a big organisation, you know, to take this on board? Have you seen any opportunities, or, you know, is it more of a, like Lou says, we kind of have to see how it goes and reskill people quite quickly?
Lou talks beautifully about it. You know, the world's not about the BBC. The BBC is quite a big thing in our part of the world, but it's so much bigger. And so the things we see are very, very similar. So one of the challenges that we had in that first week, and it's not my bit of the BBC, is we had to make sure everybody had a laptop or a phone and could log on, and that their login worked. And when 22,000 people log in all at once, that doesn't fall over. But just as Lou was saying, we are those larger problems written a little bit smaller. Tech uptake is huge. So we did a load of Zoom training, right? Everyone's mum and dad has now been on Zoom, right? And honestly, any of you had to Zoom with my bloody dad, right? It's just, isn't it? So that forced tech uptake will, crises does always drive innovation, right? So as a parent, right, I was classically really worried about screen time 3 months ago. Do you know what? Last 6 weeks, not so much. As long as they're happy enough and quiet and we're getting through the day, that's probably all right for now. That's what I mean about this. We're in a weird period, but some of the things will be reset through this period, and what were norms before will be different. I think the BBC is just an example of we face the same sort of challenges that Lou beautifully articulates there. It's about people doing stuff, and the crucial thing is this generation, right? So long-term visions are brilliant and necessary, but what do we do over the next 12 months for that group of people? The group, you know, when furlough stops and jobs start closing, and we're going to go to university or even college or whatever, aren't, because it doesn't make sense. What do we do with those people and that potential?
And is that something that either of you have already, you know, started looking at? Are you still all just kind of treading water at the moment and seeing what all comes out, or have you guys had chats, you know, in regardless of if it's just job or what you do as co-chair, Lou, about this already?
Yeah, I mean, the as you'd expect, you know, the mayor is very focused on this issue, and he talks a lot. I mean, we're all sadly, in our late 40s, early 50s, you know, same generation, we're all, you know, Thatcher's children. And we talk a lot about, you know, we don't really want a repeat of that or worse in terms of the, you know, for our own children, but the young people of the city region and the country. So very quickly, there's an enormous amount of the kind of economic recovery planning going into a skills discussion within Greater Manchester. And there will be some pretty sizable asks of government to help us support that process. And those are high level asks. The reality is you then have to very quickly work out who can deliver what, who might have a job to you know, to provide at the end of that. And so I think what Manchester is really good at, which is the bit the LEP is there to do, is the public-private bit. And so the answer lies in this new economy that we're going into, even more than it's ever done before. The reality of where the answer is somewhere between the public and private sector, because you need the public sector to be making policies, pulling levers, making decisions, accessing funding that the private sector can't. And you need the private sector involved to say, actually, if you give me 20 of those, I can give them a job. And actually, when we talk about a content production course, it needs to look like this for those people to be valid and for them to have a job to go to and be able to contribute, and me for take 20 more. And so you get fairly quickly to quite a micro level of decision making between public and private. And because of the unusual way that Manchester is wired, we're actually really, really, really good at that. And government at a national level recognises that. It's why we got devolution before the people. It's why we've got Andy as mayor, you know. And so we're wired in a, you know, I keep saying to people, as we sit in sometimes some very dark meetings, having some pretty morbid conversations about, you know, some of the data you're looking at. If I was going to choose any city in the UK to be in at the minute, I would choose this one, because we're more connected. There's more pulling together. There's more desire from the private sector to just go, what can I do to help? You know, what can I do? Where can I commit funding? Where can I contribute PPE? Or all those things we're seeing. So we're in, you know, I think in amongst the kind of rubble and the chaos, there is loads of hope here, because there is such a strong will, and we have faced adversity before, and we have been through some incredibly difficult times, albeit not of this shape. But I think it's that work together over the next 12 months. And as Chris says, you can't plan more than 6 to 12 months ahead, really. And all of that planning is focusing in that way. And I think that's where the answer will lie. So we keep saying to businesses and to individuals and to, you know, we launched, Andy and I launched something called Build Back Better a few weeks ago, which is really the vision for where we want to get to, because we do really believe, like, we could go on the other side of this to something that was better than it was before, you know. And there was a survey with the RSA a few weeks ago where only 9% of the UK wanted to return to life as it was pre-COVID. And a lot of that is about inequality. You know, a lot of that is was a lot of unhappiness, actually, and a lot of discontent, and a huge amount of inequality. And, you know, we saw from government the levelling up agenda. Well, actually, the North has been feeling that for a really long time. So we do have this opportunity to level up now.
Okay, that's really good. Thank you. So I think we've got some questions that have come in, actually, and one of them goes in, like, from Emma Green. So this kind of comes quite nicely off what you were just talking about, kind of North, really. What's more important for the Northern Powerhouse to succeed? Is it digital connectivity and skills, or transport, connectivity and infrastructure? Or is it one, or, you know, is it one or the other?
Unfortunately, the real answer to that is the one that Treasury don't necessarily want to say, which is both. Because you know, okay, so it depends on the time frame. So the reality of transport is it takes a long time to do, but it's really important, because for our children, those will be the things that will make a pan-northern economy real. Skills can be affected a bit quicker in digital infrastructure. So what you need is the first of those to make a more immediate hit, and the longer term hit will come from those others, which requires government to make financial commitments, the fruits of which they'll only see beyond their own tenancy, which is often where we get into difficult conversations. But the reality is you need both, but you'd see an impact from the first one before you'll see an impact from the latter.
Okay. Question probably for Chris. This is from Jeff Green. Controversially, couldn't the BBC digital developers who built the Olympics digital content have built the government's track and trace app? I just throw that fireball out there and just let you go for it. Just go for it.
No. So the track and trace app. There are a lot of things going on in that track and trace app. One of the problems is that they were trying to do a lot of things. And one of the golden rules of doing digital things and doing digital things well is start small, start simple, get it out and start learning. And announcing something before it's ready, calling it world class, then trying to work how to do it is pretty much a blueprint for doing it upside down. I feel for the teams making that. They had a awful lot of pressure.
Okay, so I guess that's a pretty clear answer there. One question from Emma Green. No, sorry, not from Emma Green, sorry, from Lucy Clean. Has living and working through this phase of pandemic taught you anything you'd want to keep doing, or at least learn from, or take forward? Chris, do you want to start?
Well, 1996 have been on the phone and they want their haircut back. But apart from that, we've tended to have 3 meals a day as a family, which is someone who's commuted for 15 years we haven't done, and that's been absolutely lovely. I'd like to keep more of that.
Okay. Is there anything work-wise that you think you guys will keep doing or has worked?
A bit less Zoom.
Less Zoom?
Oh, man alive, it's exhausting. The last thing I want to do is look at my face all day long.
Not going to say anything there because, you know.
Volumes.
Lou, anything that you've taken as a result of this that you'll carry on doing?
So I think, interestingly, I always used to say to our team, like, work anywhere, I really don't care. But there's a habit in coming into the office, and actually I think people after this, I hope, will feel they can do a bit of both, and that actually they can be quite productive a day or two at home, whereas I think people have kind of just got into a routine of turn up to the office and always be together, and I think a bit of both is probably good for your own brain. Yeah, and a newfound respect for teachers and their ability to handle more than 2 children, because I don't seem to be able to control 2. So
no, you know what, and I think, like, we found as well in ours, I mean, I was saying this to Chris before you kind of joined us online, is like in the north, sometimes when you've got like a national organisation, you can be seen as the face on the screen, when everyone else is in the room. So I don't know about you guys, but I found like it's kind of balanced out access to people a lot more, because you're no longer like waiting on who's around the corner, whose desk can you go and visit before you go do things. But we've also found, like, as a digital team, we'll probably actually do a lot more working from home from now on. So do you guys think, for some of the people you're working with, will there be less office work? Do you think people will just not be in the office anymore? Or
I'll have a go at that. I think the short answer is yes. So I think we went from a phase where too many people were spending too much time commuting 5 days a week to be in the offices, which are expensive and need heating, and on the same pattern in an unthinking way. And that was, in hindsight, massively inefficient. And we're on some sort of a shift to a new model that we don't know what it is yet. It is not everybody working at home. Everybody working at home all the time, I think, is just as bad as everybody commuting mindlessly into an office. We will reach some sort of new equilibrium where the balance of family time and quality time, work-life balance, the ability to put your headphones on and do stuff, and the ability to work and have communion with people and spend time with people, will find some sort of new balance. It will be tricky to get there, and I think it will be based on different types of work in our cycle. So in our digital cycle, there are phases where you just need to sit down and get on with it, and the phases where you really do need to be working closely with people. So I wonder if there'll be some sort of thing where everyone comes together for that phase, and then goes back out, rather than such and such works Mondays and such works afternoons or something like that. I think there might be purpose in where we are.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chris. I think it'll just be a different rhythm, won't there?
Yeah.
We've not quite found it yet.
Yeah.
But I think generally it'll be healthier for people. I think it'll be a bit greener because we'll spend less time driving everywhere and traveling everywhere. And I think I hope, you know, we also get to a point where we realise some of the stuff that some of the workers and some of the people who haven't been looked after very well, you know, actually it turned out they were pretty essential to the way we were to us eating and getting our bins emptied and going to hospital and all of those things. So I think there's probably a new equality, isn't there, you know?
And like, I guess one of the other things is as well, because we all work in content, so that's, you know, like a big thing that's kind of shifted. We've certainly found on, you know, the soaps that we work on, they've been quite clever and go. I think Lou, your husband works on Coronation Street as well, doesn't he?
Story editor at Corrie, yeah. So yeah, so very different. You, like you say, you know, when they can't go on set, his world shut down for a bit, whereas our world ramped up, you know, at the same time. So I think you're right. You know, you massively different worlds, you know, and just very reliant on physically being in a place, which is, yeah, not much resilience in that, is there?
Because I could see, like, with our, you know, with the soaps especially, they were really clever, you know, the way that they've had to do the 2-meter rules, the way Emmerdale's kind of done the lockdown episodes, which was, you know, really smart and a really clever way to get back to it. But obviously going forward now, we all kind of work in this content world. How do you think we're going to cope? Like, you know, in how people consume the content. People always get worried about running out. It's not going to run out, but actually for new stuff coming along as well, how do you think Manchester or yourselves will cope with that? You know, is that something that you're looking at?
I mean, there's a weird moment, isn't there, in content terms, where the audiences have probably never been bigger, and sadly the advertising revenues for those people who are funded by ad revenue are not matching the audience numbers. So I think we've probably got a bit of a moment of dichotomy where, when consumer spending falls off a cliff, which is, you know, we know it's going to do, there's a mismatch between the volume of content we'd like to make and could make and the amount that can be funded. But I think probably that'll level down, but, you know, we're not going to spend quite as much time forevermore, are we, you know, in our own homes and consuming quite as much. But, you know, Manchester's in such a good position, both in terms of its creativity, its, you know, its technical and infrastructure capabilities to make content. I mean, you know, Media City as a place is hardwired, isn't it, around that whole industry. So I think, you know, we should be well placed for something that is inevitably going to be a growth industry, you know, and we should be, you know, I think certainly in terms of our ambition, we see that as a kind of international opportunity. That's not even just a UK opportunity, is it?
Yeah. What about you, Chris? How are you finding it?
I hate predictions, but I'll make 2 predictions.
Okay.
I think we will see habits emerge forged in this time, and we're not sure what they are yet. I think things like how relaxed we have been around screen time. I think you see Netflix have seen a huge rise. I think a lot of other media went up and then has kind of come down a little bit. So I think there are new habits being formed this time, which will be endearing. And then my second, I don't know what they are yet though. My second one is, and I have seen some very good ones of these, but I think our appetite for Zoom-based drama will fade quite soon.
Fair enough. Just to kind of round it up then, so thank you very much both for you kind of speaking to us today. One last final question. Chris, you've already kind of touched on it with your predictions, but what will this city look like in 5 years' time? And what would be your ideal view? I don't know if you want a bit of time to have a think about that one.
More bike lanes. Get people walking, communal spaces, ways for people to get from one place to place safely, cheaply, and environmentally.
Yeah, I think Chris is right. I think what you'll see is what the economists would call a more distributed economy. So I think what we'll see, which I think generally is a good thing, is it will be less all about city centre and then the spokes around that, and more about, we'll always have to have a thriving city centre, but I think some of the growth of the economy will happen in more of the local boroughs, you know, because actually people will really enjoy walking to work, cycling to work, being in more green space, being nearer to home, not having to commute, you know, and so a bit more blended. And I think actually, you know, there are people already exploring what that looks like, instead of just saying, well, if you want to be a successful business, you buy a big high-rise building and you point it as near to the centre of town as you can, and everybody comes into you. I think it will be a bit flatter, and that, again, that's a massive advantage of Greater Manchester's kind of framework, if you like, is that actually we cover a huge area in a very connected way.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you both for joining us. We really appreciate it. Any last thoughts before we kind of go? No, well, thank you, Lou and Chris, for joining us for this chat. I'm sure there'll be more series spotlights on from MEDIACITY UK. But thank you very much for joining us on this very hot day. Thanks. Bye.